in Schools Policy Committee. The meeting is being webcast, so welcome to those who are online as well. We're not expecting any fire alarms. We've already had one in the building today, so fingers crossed we don't have another. But if we do, it's out the main door, down the ramp towards the cathedral, and assemble at the end of the ramp adjacent to the cathedral. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, so we've received apologies from Councillor Cam Hayward, with Councillor Mack attending as substitute. Thank you, Chair.
And I've just realised I didn't do the round of introductions that I normally do, so let's start with that and then move on to the rest of the agenda. So I'm Councillor Andrew Brown. I am chair of this committee, and I'm going to go around councillors first. So,
Councillor Richard Eddy Bishopsworth.
Councillor Jenny Bartle, Vice Chair of the Committee.
Councillor Serena Ralston Clifton Down.
Councillor Toby Wells, Knoll.
Councillor Heather Mack Lockleys.
Councillor Fabian Beckles, St George Troopers Hill.
Don Alexander, Avonmouth and Lawrence Weston.
okay, thank you, councillors. And then I'll go around officers. So I'll start with Alex and then go around this way.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Alex Hearn. I'm the Director of Economy of Place. Thanks.
Amy Rodwell, Policy Committee Coordinator, clerk in this meeting today.
Jason Thorne, Service Manager for City Centre and High Streets within Economic Development.
Hi, Anise Creter, Head of Economic Development.
Hi, I'm Jamie Berman. I'm an Economic Development Officer within Economic Development.
Simon Wilding, Chief Planner.
Emma Howarth, Head of Service, City Management and Response.
Thank you all. And we didn't note when we did the apologies, but we understand that Councillor Collar will be joining slightly late. So just note that. Any declarations of interest from councillors present? Nope, that's grand. So the minutes of the previous meeting have been published. Do you all consider them a correct record, or are there any comments or questions arising? Nope, everybody's fine with that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Jenny. So I need to ask if you're content to confirm the minutes as a correct record, but I'm going to take silence as being golden in this scenario. I have a range of chair's announcements to make. So following on, actually, from the minutes which record that at our last meeting we approved the Harbour Strategic Plan. The new Harbour Committee has now had its first meeting as a decision-making body, and its first key decision was to agree a 5-year business plan that flows from that strategic plan that we agreed. So I thought members might be interested to note that. You'll also be aware that as part of the recent budget, we have approved £300,000. Additional £300,000 has been allocated towards planning enforcement. The team is working through how to allocate that, and I anticipate they will have more to say at next month's committee as part of the general planning performance update that's planned for that. And also on the subject of planning performance, we have been formally de-designated as an authority, and I want to put on record public thanks to Simone and the whole team for their work over the past couple of years to get us to this point. I've got some officer decision notices that have arisen since the last meeting I want to bring people's attention to. So there was one on the 27th of January, which was approval to acquire land at the rear of 13 to 21 Windmill Hill Business Park, which is also known as the land to the north of Bedminster Green. It's further to a delegation authorised by committee on the 6th of February 2024. And it's to facilitate the delivery of the River Malago Restoration Project. The cost of that is £1, which is in lieu of a contribution towards the required works as part of that scheme. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I wanted to make you aware of was an officer decision notice published on signed on the 3rd of December. Which is for £134,865, and it's to commission consultants ARIP through the existing BCC Strategic Partnership contract to provide technical assistance to the client project management team as part of the transition to developing the full business case, which is being done by Jacobs UK as a new contractor. So that's to allow a smooth transition between the two outside contractors facilitating that project. So that's my announcements. Next up is public forum. So we've had a number of questions to public forum. So we've had 6 questions and then a number of statements. So I can see Mark is in the gallery. And Mark, you had 3 questions in, so you can have up to 2 supplementaries. I'm going to assume altogether, Mark, you know the rules. So up to 2 supplementaries. I'm going to assume you've seen the answers. I appreciate that they were published this morning, so apologies that we didn't manage to get those out on Friday, which is entirely down to myself. But if you want to fire away with your first supplementary, that'd be great.
In the first instance, can I ask the committee to look at my questions, please? Have they got them before them? They're not on display here. I don't know, is this speaker working or is this microphone working? Hello? Yeah. So in the first instance, could the committee please look at my questions?
The questions, the committee will have had the questions and the answers as part of their papers, Mark. So can you move to your supplementary, please?
In the first instance, the responses given do not answer my questions. I asked, is this plan, and I'm referring to the plan from September last year, which actually wasn't a plan of the fence to be erected. It was a plan of the boundary under the terms of the lease between the council and Cotton School, and I invite members to look at that plan to satisfy themselves that that's correct. But in this instance, the officer, whoever that is, has not answered my questions. And
can you ask your supplementary, please, Mark?
I'm about to, and I asked this committee, will this committee require my questions to be answered by the relevant officer?
I mean, I signed off on those answers, Mark, and I consider that your question was answered. Have you got another supplementary?
Why was the committee in September 2025 shown a plan which had nothing to do with the erection of a fence? As I've pointed out, it relates to the boundary of the lease and not to the position of the fence that was installed in 2019.
The plan that you refer to that was in the papers was provided as part of the context of the discussion. The discussion was not about the boundary of any particular offence. It was about the principle of whether the council should apply for an Article 4 direction to prohibit the school from exercising permitted development rights. It was not a discussion about any given fence line, any particular given fence line.
I'm sorry, Chair.
That's
actually, if
sorry.
you look at that, it describes the red line shows the fence line. So this committee was misled at that case.
Okay, Mark, you've had your 2 questions and you've had your 2 supplementaries and they've been answered, so I'm going to have to move on. So the next questioner is Andrew Keith Smith. Is Andrew here? Hi, Andrew. So I'm just going to check that you've had the answers as well to your...
I'd like to ask 2 supplementaries.
And yeah, indeed, you've got 2 supplementaries. So if you can ask your first one now.
The first supplementary relates to question 1 and question 2, if that's okay. Okay. The councillors who were at last September's committee meeting will already be aware that traders demonstrated in their submissions a model of how year-round 7-day opening could be funded by running a Sunday indie traders market. Why do you have so little faith in the ability of your own market service to develop a roadmap by working in partnership with the free trader resource available to you of hundreds of years of hands-on collective expertise and grassroots knowledge? And what purpose does the Economic Development Service itself serve if it continues to outsource responsibility for hard council decisions to external agencies at extra council expense?
Thank you, Keith. Sorry, thank you, Andrew, rather than Keith. Sorry, apologies. Anissa, do you want to answer that in the first instance, and I might add something?
Thank you. So we've responded that our markets service is responsible for the operational running of St Nicholas Market and outdoor trading. We have very stretched resource in there, so that is their responsibility. We've been very clear the whole way along through this process to keep operational issues and teams separate from both the markets consultation and this visioning exercise that we've committed to with committee members and traders and ourselves to undertake. So it's not that the Economic Development Service has no faith in our markets team. Our Economic Development Service is very clear on the responsibilities of our markets team, and they have very clear operational responsibilities for the running of the market. So that is why we have chosen to keep it separate. Remind me of your second question, sorry?
One question, if you don't mind. I do have another supplementary question.
Okay.
That was the one question. Okay.
Can I just add to that as well? I think the other aspect of this is beyond the operational responsibilities of economic development team, or rather the economic development team has broader responsibilities beyond those of the operations market team. And part of the issue that we have is that the economic development team has been absorbing the costs associated with not meeting the council's target for income, and that also puts a strain on their individual resource within the team to do additional work, such as this visioning work.
I'm aware I have two supplementary questions, so can I pass on to my second, because I'm representing traders' views here, rather than my own necessary...
Yeah, you move on to your second, please.
So my second supplementary is to question 3, okay? So, our question regarding the letting of Exchange Hall upper floors was about the temporary letting of such as a workspace, not the ongoing long-term vision. As business owners, we traders are constantly shocked by economic development's apparent lack of urgency in embracing potential revenue opportunities that are presented to them. For example, I visited the air hockey table in the vacant trading unit in the covered market on 3 occasions last week. The table's fun, it's a great idea, and much better than having an empty space. But on each occasion I went, it was deserted. Now, is the revenue the table earns for the council more than the potential income that stall would generate if the trading space were reoccupied? And if not, is there any reason why this stall is missing from the currently advertised list of vacant units available to let, and is therefore currently referred to as non-trading space in paragraph 21 of this committee report?
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Anissa? Or Jason?
Thank you. I'm going to start and hand over to Jason on the air hockey table and vacant trading space. So I can assure you that the economic development team do feel a sense of urgency around all the issues concerning St Nicholas Market. Very keen to sort of progress the work around the vision. So I can assure you on that point. With regard to the vacant trading space above the Corn Exchange, whilst that has some tenancy, a lot of work is required up there. It does not belong and is not within the responsibility of the markets team at the moment. That is part of the vision exercise. So the responsibility sits with our property service, not with the markets team and not with economic development. We are seeking to make those changes as part of the vision exercise. So that's one of the reasons that we're doing it. For your question around trading space and the air hockey table, I'm going to hand over to Jason. Thank you.
So that's something that we're actually discussing within the team, because I would agree that it's a more effective trading space than it's not generating a huge deal of income as a hockey table. So we need to get it advertised. I agree.
So,
yeah, we could do. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew, for that. We've had a number of statements in as well. I know that some of these people are in the gallery, but I'm not sure if everyone is. So I'm going to go through the list of statements in order, and if you're here, if you can indicate, and you'll have an opportunity to speak briefly to the statement, bearing in mind that members will have seen the statements in full. So Richard Smith, is Richard here? Do you want to speak briefly to your statement, Richard?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Can you hold the mic up, please?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, councillors and officers. You've all read my statement. There's a few highlights I'd like to just bring to your attention. We have, amongst the market traders, we have unanimous agreement to work together throughout the process of developing a joint vision for St Nicholas Market. We have almost 100% of the traders in St Nicholas Market represented by the team that we have put together. We're pleased to see that ideas raised by traders in previous consultations are beginning to gain traction, in particular, as previously mentioned, proposals to bring the upper floor into active use. We think this will give much better traction to the market as a whole. We also understand that markets function most successfully where there is strong trader representation and constructive working relationships with market management. We believe this is being achieved. And we very much look forward to working positively with the council and market management to secure a vibrant future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. The next statement is Helen. Now I can see Helen, if someone can pass the microphone back to her. Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. Oh, you okay? Okay, Helen.
Thank you. Last September, you were told that there was no reason to make an Article 4 direction to restrict permitted development at Stoke Lodge. Cottam School erected a new fence which doesn't meet permitted development rules, so it's unlawful, like the 21 CCTV cameras that came with it. And the public has been locked out of open space all term. And now Cottam School is installing a second fence, a spiked barricade inside the perimeter fence. Planning permission would never be granted for this, especially on heritage parkland. And contrary to what you were told, this council has now told the Planning Inspectorate that Stoke Lodge Parkland is a significant heritage asset, indivisible from the listed building, what you might call the curtilage of a listed building. And recognising that one fact would trigger proper planning control at Stoke Lodge. That is the only way to end this long-running, divisive and expensive issue, and without it, further litigation looks inevitable.
Thank you, Helen. I don't think what you've represented there is the formal position of the council, but I'll move on. Stephanie French. Is Stephanie here? No. Ben Mason. No. Shirley Brown. Ian Creer. Stella Creer. James Ellis. Kevin Warr. Sally Davis. Okay, so the rest of those statements are will be taken as read in that case, and we shall move on to agenda item 7, which is the closure report from the Viability Working Group. So this is an information report provided as an update of the work on the Viability Working Group, and we've recommended further exploratory work within that. Alex, can you outline the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll assume that members have been able to read the report, but essentially it details and describes why this committee agreed to convene the group, the issues and the kinds of evidence that were considered by the group, its findings, and then it promotes a series of recommendations that recommended sort of further work to examine. And these were structured sessions where we were able to invite, as well as council officers, we were able to invite partners and development practitioners working in the city. And it was particularly focused on why development, particularly in the central part of Bristol, is so difficult at the moment. And the structured sessions we looked at are listed in paragraph 9. So I just sort of reflect that I think it summarises a really important piece of reflection for the city and the council in response to a very profound set of challenges in which we find ourselves. And the word profound is something that keeps returning to me as I consider this issue and we discuss it. It does put forward some areas for further study, which I think taken together can help develop a sort of Bristol-type response to these challenges in the short and longer terms. And they are around the way we organise ourselves, the kind of work we do, but also policies that we develop as a council and how we apply them. And we can go into those in discussion as well. I would say that this is not only our problem to fix. It's not just the council's problem. This is structural across markets, government, and also the development industry itself. And we all need to reflect about how we got here nationally, and what we can do, certainly in Bristol, to help get things moving. There are other cities starting to do this work as well. I met with my counterparts at a Core Cities meeting the week before last, and they're interested in what we've done, and they started doing it as well. So we are not alone, I would say. One particular challenge which is being felt universally is the introduction of the building safety regulator. And of course this is to in response to the Grenfell tragedy, and of course to help improve the safety of people living in taller buildings in the country. So it's introduced an additional layer of control related to the design and construction of buildings of more than 18 metres in height. It's almost impossible to underestimate the impact this has had on the development of our cities. And just as a sort of summary, it's on average taking about 12% of a building away from something that you can either sell or rent. So it's reducing the amount of value that's generated from a building, and that's creating a lot of pressure on the viability of development. It's adding months and months to the regulatory process, and the costs of engaging with that process is really significant. For a large building, say the size of Debenhams in the city centre, it would be millions and millions of pounds just to go through that extra regulatory process. it's resulting in a much more expensive way to make buildings as well, and that combined with the loss of value is leading to real pressure on our ability to, or the ability of developments to bring forward affordable housing without significant subsidy from Homes England. Even if it is viable and or subsidy is available, housing associations are pivoting away from acquiring affordable housing in these types of buildings and are instead focusing on lower rise buildings or indeed fixing their own existing stock of homes. There's a lot spoken about the Building Safety Act and the Building Safety Regulator, and it is improving its processes. Something I read a paper last week which actually appeared in the Times as well, and it refers to the government's own impact assessment of the Building Safety Act when it introduced it, and it determined that the changes that are introduced as a result of the Act will, for people living in buildings between 18 and 30 metres, it will avoid one death every 6,194 years. So there's something about the way this really important legislation has been applied in a really quite sort of universal way and not as nuanced as it could have been. And as a sort of comparison, I think between the sort of September 23 to October 24, which I think is the last time this was measured, we know that 80 people died living in temporary accommodation for health reasons, which are directly attributed to living in poor quality housing. So there is a mismatch there about protecting people. The report considers some recommendations of how we can respond to these challenges, and we'd really like to bring these back to the committee. Some of them are around policy, so we'll also have the opportunity potentially to use the local plan working group to do those. It will help us build a greater pipeline. It will help us consider financial instruments and hopefully a way of just getting more activity going in the city. And I just wanted to dwell briefly on why I think that's important and why we cannot lose sight of the importance to regenerate Bristol. So development is part of the success of the city, I would say, and is a means to help people share in the dividend of that success. Bristol is a successful city. We also know it's an unequal city. We've got 20,000 households waiting for affordable housing, at least. We have 1,700 households living in temporary accommodation, including just short of 2,000 children. Nationally, we know that 20% of children living in temporary accommodation do so for 5 years on average. If you were to look at our corporate strategy around our ambitions for health and education, employment, housing, transport, climate and nature, we will need investment and development in the city to achieve any, let alone all of those, and we'll need to increase development over current rates to do so. And as a result of local government finance settlement last year and a meeting in this very room last week, we just agreed a medium-term financial strategy where 96% of our core spending power is based on council tax and business rates, and we will need to find ways of growing that if we want to continue to meet our challenges, and development is a way of doing that. It can be a dirty word, but it's not sort of divorced, and the benefits of development shouldn't be divorced to just topical proposals in relation to planning applications or meetings of committee. It's pretty fundamental to the work we do and the work a lot of the economy does in a place like Bristol. So I think it's important for us to retain that in our minds as we sort of continue to explore this. Development in the UK is very regulated, and that's a lot of scrutiny that's technical, it's political, it's popular as well, with lots of public consultation. Even a medium-sized application will, for development in the city, would have an EIA screening opinion, a long pre-application process, lots of validation requirements to get to become a valid planning application, lots of consultation, design review panels, and by the time it comes to committee with a recommendation, it would have hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of hours of people looking at it, tens of thousands of pages, and quite often millions of pounds worth of cost as well. And they're tested in great detail by the time they get to committee against regulation and policy and guidance. So I think it's really important that, set against that, in helping to sort of regrow a pipeline of activity, that we can provide certainty to that investment, including when applications find themselves at committee for determination. So I think on reflection, I found it, and I know my colleagues found it a really valuable piece of work. There is a lot of opportunity in here for us to try and address some of these challenges. And we're very much up for it as an officer group, and I know that we'll continue to speak to members about it, and I know that the sector as well in the city will want to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I've seen a couple of hands, but I'm going to take advantage of being chair to speak first on this occasion. First of all, I want to thank you, Alex, and the team for your work in organising the workflow and the sessions and inviting our various external experts in to give us testimony and to field our questions. And I also want to thank those external experts who were part of the process for giving up their time and giving us their expertise. I think the exercise for me, and the other thing is I want to obviously thank the members of the working group for their input as well, and also to apologise for them, because ideally I think I would have liked to have circulated this report ahead of it being published, but timelines and deadlines did not permit that, unfortunately. So my apologies. I think this process crystallised a lot of the challenges in this arena. Certainly, it chimed with the conversations I have when I'm out and about at events, and I meet representatives from the development community, as well as all those representations that we as individual councillors receive, particularly around some of the infrastructure challenges that new development brings to our existing communities. So from that point of view, I think it's fleshed out those challenges quite substantially for us. I think the second thing I want to pick out is that this work is against a backdrop of broader economic circumstances, and obviously that's a big part of financial viability, but also the additional changes in the development frameworks from national level, which will change some of the levers that we have at our disposal, and that's something that we need to always be aware of as the broader national picture. And then looking at some of the recommendations, although there are recommendations here which are things that we can explore further as a council and potentially bring back to this committee as part of an ongoing conversation. There are also things that are getting underway and that we are doing, and I think I was just going to pick out the Affordable Housing Practice Note Addendum that was recently published, which is designed to try and address some of the viability issues for affordable housing, or to lay out how we will help developers address those in particular circumstances, and what we expect in that case. And also the spatial development strategy, which is now getting underway at pace, and we've had, as an organisation, we've had some bilateral meetings with the Combined Authority, and there is other meetings in the diary, and there's also going to be cross-party engagement with that as well. So obviously there are lots of things that we can explore further, but there are things that we're also getting underway with in this arena. Okay, so I have got Toby, then Richard, then Serena on my list at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, to echo your thanks to the officers, but and in particular the external stakeholders as well who came along. The sort of wealth of knowledge and the different perspectives were really valuable. Sometimes conflicting perspectives, but that's okay. People are coming at it from different directions, so it was useful for us to understand that. I don't think any of us were expecting a magic wand solution to this issue to come out of a working group. We would have been naive if we did think that. But I think it's even more tricky than perhaps we initially imagined. And it's clear that the scale of the problem is big. It's not exclusive to Bristol, but there are some kind of local impacts, like the contracted drain into Hinkley Point that's kind of exacerbating the issue for us, and there's a few other local elements to it as well that were useful to understand. I think the most worrying thing for me is this trend towards the low density greenfield development on the outskirts of the city, because it's cheap, it's predictable to build, but it's not the high density or higher density inner city development on the brownfield sites that we really need, not just because it's good to develop, but because it enables people to live sustainable lives and boost our city's economy. So what we would love to do is to have our cake and eat it and have a nationally funded pipeline of publicly owned housing. You know, this would give us a long-term pipeline that would give the contractors the security they need. It would allow us to deliver, I think, high-quality housing as well, but that's something that we don't currently have. So in the absence of that kind of program, we haven't really got any easy choices to make. If you look at, some of them might give us a marginal benefit, but most of the ones that would give us a big benefit are actually quite difficult choices. So what I think I'm looking forward to now from the officers is a real objective assessment of some of those recommendations to understand which levers can we pull to have the biggest benefit, but also minimising the impact that we have on the quality of the housing and the other buildings that we deliver. And I know that goes without saying, but in the workshops that we had, it was quite qualitative. So it's now the case is to understand, relative to each other, what are the best choices we can make to sort of solve this issue. And just one quick technical point on the building safety regulator. I did see in the news that I think it was the Premier Inn development, they announced they managed to get through it in 3 or 4 months, I think it was. So hopefully things are improving in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. And that point about low density on the outskirts is quite interesting. I was party to a conversation this last week about a site where there was a discussion about whether low density housing, which would be typical for that type of site, was actually the best thing to develop, or whether there was ways in which, density could be increased along with making sure that the transport infrastructure supported that, but just trying to, and I think the thing, the message out of that is that the more low density housing you build, the more land you need to sustain that type of building, and that might be something that along with our neighbours will be part of the considerations of the spatial development strategy as we go forward. Did you want to come back on any of that, Alex?
Just briefly, the point about density I think is fascinating, because I think obviously there are different markets operating in places, and Bristol's no different. Some people are building homes for sale, some people are building homes for rent, and we are overall, we are, in terms of actually what gets started, it appears we are observing a de-densification of homes being delivered, and that feels like it's that the much higher density development is not happening, so that what we see is the lower density stuff that was going to happen anyway, but that's the things that are actually being built. But I think on those parts of the city that are almost in the centre and not quite on the edge of the city, we are seeing sort of almost mansion block typologies coming forward, which are beneath the 18 metres, but that in itself, on its own, probably doesn't generate enough value to be viable, which is why you have some applications coming forward with that. Then a block of sort of single occupancy, PBSA or otherwise, to help cross-subsidise it. So there are gymnastics going on in the market, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I had Richard next and then Serena.
I would very much like to add my voice to what's already been said by you and Toby. I personally found it one of the most fascinating working groups I've been on. And thank you to the officers and Alex for bringing together a range of different stakeholders who have real experience, of course. Clearly, there are huge macroeconomic issues, the impact of the Building Safety Act, government, fiscal and economic policy, etc., regional factors, local land supply. So we have to really focus on what we can achieve, and I think the recommendations are seeking to do that. I have to admit, although I found it fascinating, at times I found it very, very sober reading and listening. In fact, one meeting, I felt like slitting my throat at the end, although I know there'd be plenty of people queuing up for that privilege. But fortunately, Alex managed to actually salvage it, but with one positive point. But the density issue, which has been alluded to already, is, I think, key. And I do hope a copy of this is sent to every member and substituted on our two planning committees, because I think that members need to be aware of the challenges, huge obstacles facing the sector, and what we need to be prepared to grapple with. I do remember, Siobhan will probably recall, probably one of the least agreeable parts of her role is dealing with gripes from outraged of Bishopsworth. And last year also I said, I've read that of 10 local authorities, Bristol's not been having the lowest density for new construction. I do really think we need to address this, and that can only be done by members, well, not only done, but certainly members of our DC or planning committees need to realise that. And just one local example, and it's not huge, far from it, but a few years ago, the redundant Bishopsworth police station was marketed. The successful developer sought some advice from me, and I said, I urge you to do pre-application consultation, which they did, and they actually had an exhibition which people dropped into, and they had originally 10 artisan dwelling houses, and it didn't overlook anyone or impact on neighbouring residential development, but it was reduced by the planning service from 10 to 9, then to 8. And that's just one small example, but if that's happening in scores of cases right across the city, those are homes people could live in. And I think we need to address that issue.
Thank you, Richard. Serena.
Thank you. Yeah, I also found it very enlightening, and it was a very, very valuable piece of work. So thank you, everybody, on all sides. I was going to question what happens next. I know that's been touched on, but how do we move this forward? There are lots of different moving parts, aren't there? Some of which are out of our control. It's very much government level. But I just want to touch on something else, which is density. I think that, and I don't know how we do this, but I think there is some part of the narrative where we need to bring people along with us. So if people think, and I mean general members of the public on all sides, that new housing is well designed, it's quality, it's something that's going to last, it's on a humane scale, it fits in with the local cityscape, it's not just cookie cutter, that is something where we will get more consent, more engagement, more agreement. And I think that's really, really important. And you see that in other countries in Europe where they, you know I'm going to mention this phrase, have gentle density. They do have the mansion blocks we're talking about. Those are permissible, as you're saying, under the Building Safety Act. They are popular. Maybe we should be looking at that. I do agree, though, that very low density is just not going to solve anything for us. The sort of greenfield developments you often see are very often car-based as well. But then I was going to move on to ask you about the urban living SPD, which we should be beginning a review on, and that would be an opportunity to introduce some of this perhaps more creative type of design and policy. However, my question is really, what is going to happen to the SPD? It's going to be a supplementary document, isn't it, under the new planning reforms, and how would that fit? So lots of thoughts and questions there, really. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So, in terms of what happens next, as Andrew has set out, some of these things have already started happening. So we're talking and developing, preparing the SDS with our colleagues at the Combined Authority and neighbouring authorities. We're also thinking about the kinds of work we do. So what is the work of the regeneration team, and what is the type of what are the types of skills that we'll need in that team and in planning and in other teams in the future. And I mentioned the Cool Cities meeting I went to a couple of weeks ago. What I think is happening across, certainly in cities where density is more ordinarily experienced, is that it's not just about planning and it's not just about regeneration frameworks, but what is the role of bringing together public and private funding to help intervene. So I think we're going to see almost like a more almost three-dimensional approach to the kind of work we do. So we'll develop that, and that will be through our leadership and management of the services. I'm very happy to bring back proposals through the appropriate channel. If it is a policy change or a guidance change, then definitely we will come through committee, through local plan working group. We're going to have to start a new local plan as soon as we adopt this one. We'll need to really think about the kinds of policies we want to put in there.
Sorry, yeah. I was going to ask Simone if you can come in and just talk briefly about what's happening with SPDs, but also that point about the local plan and whether we start the next one before or after the current one's been adopted. But.
Okay, I'll start with the SPD. The issue is that nationally, but there's a new system of local plans being brought in, and as part of that, the government have announced that from 30th of June this year is the cut-off point when supplementary planning documents can still be produced. Thereafter, you can only have local plans, supplementary plans, which also need to be examined by the planning inspectorate, or like our region frameworks, how we do at the moment, which are other material considerations. And hence, even for the current SPDs that we do have, we could only still update them as an SPD if we went through the requisite consultation process before then. And as you can appreciate, until 30th of June, that's not very long. Particularly while we're still trying to get the current local plan over the line, which, fingers crossed, we will very soon now be able to get to the main MOTS consultation and then turn that around and get the representations from that back to PENS. Then we need to get their final letter to us, and then we expect to be able to adopt it. Hence, but the transition regulations in the current NPPF also mean we have to start the new local plan by 30th of June, or we have to publish the first step in that new local plan by 30th of June as well. Hence, I would say it's highly unlikely that we have the current emerging local plan adopted before we have to start the next one. So we will start the next one before we've got the current one adopted. Having said that, clearly we can also update, and that is something that we're actively working on in terms of reviewing our current SPDs. How can we update them? What form should it take that it kind of best helps us in this sort of national framework constraints that we're operating in? The other thing to be aware of that there is, of course, the National Planning Policy Framework consultation going on that some of you are involved in closely in making sure we send our representations in on that by the 10th of March. In parallel, there's also consultation on national urban design guidance, basically. And what we need to look at, basically, is how far does that national guidance actually go, and how much more do we need locally? Because, you know, it may actually also be an opportunity to massively strip back what we need to have extra locally. I mean, the national one is we have to take anyway, so we better just make the best of that.
Sorry, can I just, I was just going to quickly add, and my understanding is that on a whole range of things, the government is saying that you can't go further than national policy in any case, certainly on more technical things. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what's currently in the proposed draft. Clearly, we'll have to see whether that comes through to the final version. But yeah, that's what's currently proposed. That on many things, you know, where there's a national standard proposed, for example, on building efficiency, you can't then have a local standard.
Okay, thank you, Simone. Serena, if you've got very quick, I've now got a forest of hands and I'm conscious of time, but if...
Sorry, I don't want to hog the space.
A couple of quick supplementaries.
Very quickly, it's just a really practical question. What about our co-living SPD? Will that be coming through before that date? So I'm aware that's bubbling. I don't remember that coming back to committee recently, but I could be wrong.
Because that has already been to consultation in line with our statement of community involvement, we think that that is still feasible, that we can bring that to committee ahead of the 30th of June. What we are currently still checking with legal is whether it is possible to do it ahead of the local plan that it's actually supplementing.
Okay, thank you, Simone. I've got a whole host of names now, but Heather, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't sit on this group, but I was really glad that it was happening, and I'm really glad to have the opportunity today to come here and interact with it. So thank you for those that were on the group. I think that this area, viability and development generally, is somewhere that it's very hard to have trust. I think a lot of us, from a political sense, focus on building the right kinds of housing and affordable housing. And I think there's a real power imbalance between those that are trying to drive that sort of housing and developers. And so I think that the fact that this time and effort was put in by political colleagues to work through and look at this viability will hopefully I mean, I'm not going to say build up that trust, but really more people being aware of all of those issues. Obviously, I realise it very much went through the understanding of the issues with some recommendations of what the sort of steps that might come to fix it. And I know it wouldn't be realistic to have the steps of what we're going to do, and it's an ever-changing environment that's going to get more and more difficult. I guess I'm really looking forward to these instructions that have gone out to look into to how we might possibly at some point have a plan for this. You know, I'm looking forward to when some of that's a bit more concrete and coming back to this committee. I've really appreciated the point that Alex made about weighing up risk and safety and difficulties. And actually, I just looked up the figure you said, and it was actually children dying in temporary accommodation, not even all people, but children dying in temporary accommodation was about 60 in 5 years. And I think that can really, really flag the importance of affordable housing and all of, I guess, the demand and the importance on one side, and how do we balance that against all of the risks and controls we have on the other side. And then thrown into all of that is obviously profitability and things that we currently don't have the powers to fight with in terms of how do we actually get investment and how do we actually build the sort of housing we need. I say currently, I don't have great hopes, but I think staying focused on what we are trying to do and why we are doing it in terms of our housing situation in the city is really helpful. So thank you for everyone who did that work.
Thank you, Heather. And I've got Don, Richard, Jenny, and Susan on my list. I'm just going to say, obviously something that's come out of this, Alex, is obviously people there's obviously an appetite to see some sort of update at some point as to where these various different recommended work streams have got to, what, bearing in mind the sort of changing and evolving context. So I think we need to make sure that we program that into our workflow for, I don't know, I was thinking 6 months I was thinking initially a year, but I think that might be too long. So I think maybe 6 months to be able to say this is the progress we've made on X, Y, or Z, or this is what the current status of these seven different areas of further investigation. Don.
Thanks. Yeah, Andrew, as you say, development is a very controversial subject in itself. And, if you come to our planning committees, as they're now called, you will find, many members who are widely at variance with some of what follows logically from the work of this task and finish group, actually very widely at variance in their views. And if you dig a little bit below some of the things that have been expressed here today, you'll find that as well. I think it's really important that you, Chair, bring together, there's a danger that this committee and any task and finish group that's spun off from it becomes a learning exercise and a school for councillors in how these things work. And actually there's a decision-making process that's going on in parallel outside of here. And actually, we need to be brought face to face, and we need to take responsibility for that decision-making process. So, for instance, when an addendum comes out to a practice note on affordable housing and viability, that really should come through this committee, so that we have we have a duty to say that this is what we want or it isn't what we want, and not just for the administration to put that out, or officers, albeit that they, what they've done is good, and they have delegated power. I think it's for you, Chair, politically, to make sure that the governance process pins us down, and that we are responsible for all that's going on for the challenging decisions that will need to be made, because there are members of. We have leaders, administration in this council, political leadership, and members of their party who are taking a different decision in public from the ones that the administration itself is taking. And I think that needs to be brought together, and they need to decide what do we actually want to do together as a council. And that means, and that's our responsibility. We can't pin that on officers. We need to take responsibility for that. And I think, Chair, you need to pull that all together, and not just let us have a learning exercise here, but take responsibility.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Richard.
I shall be mercifully brief in response to your edict, Chairman. One thing I forgot to say, quite a few of the recommendations suggest the sub-regional approach and the active involvement of WECA. Now, I have to say, from what I heard in our deliberations, I was, shall we say, disappointed by their involvement hitherto, and I do have more confidence in the present incumbent as Metro Mayor than her predecessor, but I think we do need to actually make that overtures. I think particularly the session about construction, inflation, and actually the supply. I do remember posing the point to what extent WECA had got involved in the issue of resolving or addressing the training in the construction trade, and I wasn't convinced they'd done anything. So I'm just underscoring the need to actually encourage them.
Thank you. Jenny.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of zoom out a bit and say the government's got challenged for the country to build 1.5 million houses, and we've got a challenge to build 60,000 houses, whatever it is. And the government's making a lot of changes to the NPPF and Building Safety Act and all this. But one of the things that we heard at one of the sessions was that this isn't a problem that they have in the same way in Europe. And there are very specific things that the government might need to change if they want to unstick our national building challenges and housing supply. And I want to make that point very clear to the government, that whilst we are undertaking this exercise, and I think it's been very productive, I did sit there thinking, well, there's no, this is like a NIMBY's dream, isn't it? Like, no one needs to be a NIMBY anymore because there's not going to be any high rises, there's not going to be any building, we're not going to deliver our housing requirements. We're in a real pickle. And yes, we've come up with some actions that may unstick us. We may be able to get funding out of the government to build more council housing, for example. But I think that there's fundamental challenges that in how the government approaches planning compared to other countries that maybe our country needs to think about. I was thinking about like what compromises we as a council might need to make. And it was actually from doing all this work, looking in reasonable detail at, oh, what could we do with our local plan? What could we do with our land assembly? That there is a limit, there's a hard limit on what we can achieve. And we will try our best to achieve that. And we've got some clear lines of work to approach. But I really, really want to make this point clear that we're at sea and the government needs to help us. That was the thing that came out most clearly to me in this work.
Thank you, Jenny, and then Susan.
Hi, yes. Having kind of read through it, one of the things that kind of stuck out for me was about skills and supply chain. And looking at the average age of construction workers in the UK. I know last week was the National Apprenticeship Week. I know that City of Bristol College do construction courses and stuff. But we also struggle with the larger companies to do the tier, what is it called? I can't find it now. Tier 2 and Tier 3 or something.
Is that Tier 1 and Tier 2 contractors?
Yeah, that one. And the lack of actual companies in Bristol that can do that kind of level of work. And I'm just wondering if, as a city, what we can do to sort of like pull that kind of company in. What are we doing with regards to educating younger people into construction work and in construction companies? And that was the thing that kind of stuck out for me was, you know, what are we doing to invest, if you like, in that sort of side of things, to kind of widen those opportunities for young people, bringing in companies to build, lowering that price of cost of building, because we've got the companies and the people to actually do the building work that we need.
We just so happen to have Jane Taylor with us, who probably wasn't expecting to speak on this item, but here you go.
I can definitely have a go. Thank you, Chair. We've got some brilliant, innovative developments here in Bristol City Council and across our partners, both employers and training providers. You may know about Building Bristol, where we changed the planning rules so that we could require all major developers to work with us on producing an employment and skills plan for construction phase and end use. And we now, we're working with, I think, 135 developments on that. And that's helping it's helping us see the kind of pipeline and to get behind that. We have On-Site Bristol, which works with over 200 local employers of all sizes, construction companies, and helps them recruit Bristol young people into really great apprenticeships. And we got Bristol Works, which is doing that really early career insight piece through schools and settings, so young people get to understand the huge range of jobs that are available through construction. And it's such a booming growth city in that area. And last Thursday, Councillor Mack and I took part in a meeting with the South Bristol Youth Guarantee, where one of our employer partners, Griffiths, spoke really warmly. They had just taken on a young man who was neat into that company, and he's now on an apprenticeship there. So we've got lots going on. But Chair, I understand that we've been asked to do a more detailed briefing on this. So this will all be coming back here with more detail, and just to look at what more do we need to do to make sure local young people get on these pathways to these great jobs.
Thanks, Jane. Oh, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jane. We are also in discussion with our colleagues at WECA about what we can do regionally. Just a point on Tier 1 and Tier 2 contractors, Councillor. So effectively they're the largest construction companies in the country, and they'll operate anywhere, particularly Tier 1s. They're not in Bristol to any great degree because they don't have any projects to build, because there's nothing big enough ready to be built or that has planning permission that's viable to build. So in order to get them here, we need a much longer and deeper pipeline of opportunity for them to come. That it may not bring price down, but it will bring some certainty to the costs, because they could say, I know how much it will cost to make this building because I did that one over there. But we don't have that.
Thank you. It's a very good question, Susan, and it's something that we also picked up at the One City Economy and Skills Board as well last time around, and we were down in the skills, the South Bristol Skills Centre at Hengrove in my ward, and they've got a lot of students at the moment, but the challenge is getting out into the market. And you mentioned the average age of construction workers. But the other challenge is the atomised nature of the trades, and the trades being provided by very small companies that maybe don't have the resource or to do the apprenticeships, and it's about getting that sort of the council and other agencies doing that work of facilitation to ensure that those, I can see your hand, Fabian, to ensure that those jobs and opportunities are matched up with local people. But yeah, very good question and good challenge, so thank you. Fabian.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a problem with lots of sites that have permission but then don't get built, or they start and they abandon halfway through. Have we, and there's everything in this report, what the government was consulting on its proposed changes to planning legislation and its plans to streamline it. Have we contributed to that as an authority, as a local planning authority, in order to sort of raise the kind of issues that we're actually having?
Yes. The planning policy team seem to be completing a never-ending series of consultations at the moment, and that included the ones on the planning process piece as well as the framework and everything else. I'm going to just draw things to an end at this point. I'm going to come back. I mentioned the affordable housing practice note earlier, and that was originally going to come to this committee, Dawn, but it got kind of superseded by decisions that were made in relation to an outstanding project that sort of preempted what was in the housing practice note, and practice notes themselves can be published under delegated authority. So I am happy to own that politically. I'm happy to own the decision to not in the end bring that to committee for the sake of timeliness and getting it published and out there and providing that guidance to the development community. So just thought I'd come back on that piece.
Chair, I'm just concerned to narrow the gap between what people are saying in planning committees and what they will accept. Quite often they're looking at an application, they're judging it against our policies, and they're finding a fault with it, not because of the policies, because they don't like it, or because they don't like the policies. Now, we need to own those policies, and not having something come via this committee, I know it goes through a local plan working group, etc., not having come through public committee means that people go into those planning committees and they just disown all the policies that they themselves have issued the week before, and it's not acceptable. We have to have firmer decisions, and they have to be based around policy, not around personal like or dislike. It's a matter of taking responsibility. That's happening a lot. And I would encourage you to observe some of the committee meetings and see what's going on.
Okay, thank you, Don. Right, we're asked to note this report as per the recommendation, and we will take away an action to bring an update to committee members in around 6 months' time to say where things are at and where we've managed to get progress on some of those suggestions. So the next item is the St Nick's Market update. This is again an information report to provide an update to committee members on work undertaken since the decision on the deferral of a decision on the 22nd of September last year, and it's also want to note that due to an error with a spreadsheet, an incorrect version of the report was published, or an incomplete version of the report was published initially. So please refer to the supplement version of the report for the complete item. And I'm going to pass it Jason in the first instance. Over to Jason.
So just getting my presentation up on screen. So, thank you. So this is to provide an update following the committee that was held in September.
Go. The great new tech.
It's in a PDF.
I've just realised I hadn't factored in a comfort break to this meeting like I normally do. Is a comfort break something that's going to be useful at this point?
Water.
Yeah. Can we have adjourn for 5 minutes for a comfort break and an opportunity to get the tech sorted?
It was there, wasn't it?
Huh?
It was there.
Let's get started again. So, now the tech is working. Moving on to the update on St. Nick's Market. So, over to you, Jason.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, yeah, this is to provide an update following committee in September. So, you've asked for this update. And presentation follows the same structure as the report, but focus on 4 areas. So, vision engagement, markets and events activity, capital improvements, and finance. Thank you. So in September, this committee agreed to commission or asked for a vision for the market to be developed. So we have commissioned independent facilitator to lead that engagement, and the sessions are currently taking place, and they will be producing a vision document as a result of that engagement. So the aim is to gather a different range of perspectives on the market's current operations, challenges, opportunities. So the name of the consultants that we've commissioned are called market curators. They are recognised as experts in markets, food halls, and they've come up with an intensive programme for that engagement and vision development. So we've also commissioned local creative company called Play Disrupt, and they started activity at the market last Wednesday. So they're delivering activity over a 10-day period, including half term. So that's to engage with the public who visit the market to find out what they love and what could be improved in the future. And we are getting update reports from them on a daily basis. So in the first 4 days, they engaged with over 300 people. So focusing on markets and events activity, so we had UK shared prosperity funding, which has enabled us to put some external funding into developing the offer at the market, and that's focused on Grommet Unleashed activity that took place in the summer, Christmas, the Play Disrupt engagement, and we are going to be running some events in Broadmead before early May as well. And we've, using that funding, also created a short-term events development role within the team to create that additional capacity. So in terms of Grommet Unleashed in the summer, the traders sponsored the Grommet from film impact funding that they attracted from the council's film office and from film companies. So the Grommet was in the doghouse in the covered market, which is the unit our friend in the gallery referred to earlier on. Quite a difficult unit to let, so we've been trying to use it for different creative uses. So can you, yeah, that's fine. So it did boost footfall. So obviously the market's not normally open on a Sunday or bank holiday. So on those 9 Sundays and the bank holiday, the market attracted just over 40,000 people. Mixed attendance in terms of traders, so around 50% of traders overall opened. And what we're saying there is future Sunday opening should be considered as part of the vision development process. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is a picture of the Grommet, so Aladdin, and yeah, the doghouse. And we had a series of paw prints around the market to take people from different places within the market to lead them to the doghouse. So overall, you know, really successful operation. That's not to say, obviously, there were always improvements that we would make if we did it again in the future. Next slide, please. So Christmas. So the Christmas offer, obviously really, really important time of year for traders. We refreshed it to include 10 Christmas chalets that were along Corn Street, and they operated alongside our normal outdoor pitches, which includes umbrellas. And that additional activity helped us increase income by 30% in terms of outdoor trading. And the markets operated 7 days a week from the middle of November to the 24th, alongside the indoor activity. So we supported a large Christmas tree that was outside the front of the Corn Exchange, and we also delivered a Santa's Grotto in one of the underutilised trading spaces. Next slide, please. So the activity was supported by a marketing campaign, which is wide-ranging, included social media, print material, posters, flyers, banners. And we did a trader survey, and that generated 40 responses. So true to say, the overall feedback was positive, but there are things that could be improved in future. So
People like the atmosphere, the staffing of it, the festive elements, including the chalets, community feel, location. But some people felt that we could learn from, other markets in other areas such as Bath and Wales, where they're seen as better promoted and having higher levels of footfall and less safety issues. So yeah, just some pictures again. This is a poster that was created by the team, and we had that on bus stops across the city. So those were provided as part of the bus stop advertising contract. They were provided as part of the contract of social value. Picture of the chalets in the middle, and one image of the Christmas tree. Next slide, please. And yeah, the grotto, which took place in a room that we know as GO4, which we'll be looking to bring into use in the future. And yeah, and just another one outside the front of the Corn Exchange. Next one, please. So the team's been looking at other commercial opportunities. So we've had a photo booth in the main lobby foyer area of the Corn Exchange over the last 3 months. And again, and the hockey table in the unit that was used by Grommet. So those have been provided at no cost to the council, and we receive 30% of the turnover from the income generated. Heritage tours that take place in the basement, we've agreed a licence agreement with the operator of those tours. And Corn Street Fleet, this is a evening night market that we trialled back in the summer. I have to say there's some learning from that. If we were to do it again, there were some issues to address in terms of antisocial behaviour, homelessness, rough sleeping, and yeah, a lot of trader feedback that they were feeling quite unsafe at being there. We worked with ACH and Produce West to hold migrant and refugee trading spaces on some Fridays back last year as well, and that's again something we want to continue with in the future. And we do have a market in Merchant Street's north within Broadmead, which is next to TK Maxx. So part of the reason our income has increased over the last year as well. About a year ago, we only had 2 of the 8 trading pitches let. We are currently in a position where we've got 5 let, so that's made a good contribution to generate more income. So we've commissioned another organisation called Compass Presents, and they're going to be running a series of events before early May. So moving on to capital improvements. So the market's seen a lot of investment over the years. Obviously, it could always do more. It's a challenging grade 1, grade 2 listed building for historic nature. So we've already invested over £800,000 over the last 6 years on a range of different activities, including CCTV, wayfinding, electrical safety, building a food source within the covered market. Our colleagues in Corporate Landlord recently had a building condition survey carried out for the whole of the building, so the space that's occupied by the market, but also the vacant spaces above the market in the Corn Exchange. And there's around £5.5 million worth of work that is needed over the next 10 years to get the building into a good state of repair. Positive news, full council last week, I believe it was agreed that the market would receive £550,000. And that is to be prioritised in line with the survey, the building condition survey, and advice from the markets team. We need to focus on health and safety critical issues, but also look at how we can improve the experience for traders and the public alike. This is all capital funding. So in terms of quite a focus on improving accessibility. So we're looking at providing an accessible toilet and baby change facility within a redundant space within the Glass Arcade. We're looking at paving Exchange Avenue and All Saints Lane to even some of the surfaces out. And we're looking at installing a goods lift within the Corn Exchange building as well, so that we can, again, commercialise and provide a better space for items such as the chalets to be stored in the future. So moving on to finances. So 25-26 income target is 746,000. We're currently forecasting in-year income of 674,000, so estimated shortfall of 72,000. This is an improved position on what we presented back in September. Again, this is a result of
the 5% increase that was agreed and implemented back in April on indoor and outdoor fees, the additional income generated in Broadmead, and the refreshed Christmas offer. So on April the 1st, all market fees will be increased by 3.4% in line with the latest CPI rate of inflation, as per the Council's fees and financial procedures that are focused on income generating services such as the market. And the future of any fees and charges work will be linked to the vision and capital improvements that we're seeking to carry out. So this is the final slide. So yeah, really focused on getting the vision developed at the moment. And as I've said, engagement is already underway and planned, and we'll continue with traders, the public, council teams and other stakeholders, but obviously yourselves as committee members as well. So the recommendation for this committee is that they note that a further report will be brought back to the committee to update members on stakeholder engagement and vision work set out in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Got a crick in my neck now. Yes, so thank you for that. I think the first thing I'm just going to say, just so that members are aware, is that I'm obviously kept abreast of developments by the markets team, but I've also met with market curators, but I'm also going to be meeting with the traders as well as part of the process of developing the vision. And I think I would just reiterate some of my previous remarks on this. Oh, as is Jenny as well. Jenny's also involved with the process. But I think I'll reiterate some of my previous remarks on this, which is I think we all want to see the market thrive and survive and be, testament to, to be a key part of the fabric, continue to be a key part of the fabric of the city. But I think we also need to make sure that it works for traders, residents and the council alike, and we need to make sure that we're getting that balance as part of the vision work and as part of any future decision on fees and charges as well, that we're maintaining that balance and making sure that that it's delivering what it needs to do for all those parties. I think the other thing I would say is I've got there's a broader piece of work around the vision for this old city and the city as a whole as well. And I've started conversations with officers about how we maybe articulate that better going forward, and how we present a picture of the city to the world, and how we market the city to the world at large, by which I mean broader region, country, and world. So that's my sort of opening remarks. Richard.
Thank you very much for a comprehensive and contextual report. I've got two questions. I'm very pleased to see the general positive Christmas trading picture, both inside and outside. Though from reading the report, it appears to have been a bit patchy. Do you have any reflections on why some parts of the market benefited more than others?
I think the run-up to Christmas was quite difficult nationally, actually, so I think that made consumer confidence a bit subdued, particularly into November, and people spent later on. That's my kind of view on it. Obviously, the Glass Arcade's very focused on lunchtime trade, which is obviously going to be different in the run-up to Christmas.
Right. And with regard to the February vision consultation, you've described that as intensive and creative. Obviously, normally the council runs generally longer consultations than 10 days. What confidence can we have that every part of the market, St Nick's market, will be consulted?
So there's the 10 days I was referring to is just the activity that Play Disrupt are carrying out on site at the market itself. And the market creators will be meeting with a steering group of market traders, but also offering one-to-one sessions with traders. So we are keen to make sure that the consultation or engagement exercise is inclusive and involves as many people as possible.
Thank you. Fabian and then Serena.
Yeah, on the Christmas markets, a few years back, we used to have a sort of a main sort of Christmas market in Broadmead that went all the way up to Union Street. And now it only stops at the podium, and the bit from the podium to Union Street used to be all local traders, and it was substantially bigger than the St Nicholas bit, the few chalets we had in outside St Nicholas Market. And I'm just thinking, having a sort of Christmas market in two places with a fair walk for some people, if you don't know Bristol or you're visiting and you don't know Bristol, would it not make sense to have that all, have it all in one location? Go back to the, arrangements we used to have. I don't quite know why the local traders bit for the Christmas market suddenly stopped a few years back, but I just think it makes more sense to have a bigger Christmas market offer.
I think obviously we're keen to attract more people to St Nicholas Market around Christmas, so strengthen and add to the critical mass that we've already got. I think one of the issues from my perspective with Broadmead is obviously the German market's quite distinctive to the offer that we've got at the market, but also there are only so many traders that want to trade, and it's without diluting the existing market, how do you strengthen it rather than spread your jam too thinly? That's just my personal view on it.
Thank you, Jason. I had Serena next, and then Toby.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Yeah, it's very good to see this report, and I actually nipped down to St Nick's myself on Saturday. I'm very fond of it, and it was really good to see it thriving. It was buzzing, actually, beginning of half term maybe, and the sun had come out.
First sunny Saturday for
Yeah, so it was a very, very positive vibe down there. I just wanted to echo a trader's view and question from earlier about the upper floors being brought back into use. I mean, it would be, hopefully, the vision process won't not hold that up. That's not quite the right phrase, but it would be something that could be expedited quite quickly because there is space up there. I get that it's not part of your T necessarily, it's corporate landlord, isn't it? But what initial ideas are there for using that space? What could it be used for, was my first question. In the market, in so many senses, is such a jewel in the crown, really, for the city centre, so just be good to maximise everything we've got there.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely agree. I mean, at this point in time, obviously, I've said that that space is not within our remit, but we hope it will become within our remit as part of the vision development. I think lots of people have a lot of kind of views on how we could develop that space. I've got some views that I think would be amazing for that space that would really complement the market, but obviously we need to undertake the vision exercise to bring together everyone's views so it's collaborative. As soon as we've got that kind of vision and the kind of aspiration for that space is clear, then I think we can move forward with how we kind of adjust the kind of boundary or responsibility for that space for it to become within economic development or the market service, if that's the decision, as part of the development of the vision. I mean, it makes sense, but we're really keen that that vision development piece happens first so that we have a kind of shared consensus on that space.
I think the other positive news is obviously full council agreed on an amount of capital spend, so there are things that need doing to the upstairs to make it fit to be used. So for instance, there's not a There's not a working lift at the moment, so it's not fully accessible. Not that we'll be able to deal with that in the short term, but that needs dealing with in the longer term.
Thanks, Jason. I mean, I would add my voice to, what I have, various internal conversations, expressed, a desire to see something done with that upstairs space, because, ultimately that is an asset of the councils that is being underutilised at the moment, and, for no other reason than it could be financially beneficial to the council and therefore the residents of the city as a whole. We should be looking at what we do there, let alone what it can do in terms of potentially providing additional or complementary provision within the market space. Toby, I had you next.
Thanks, Chair. So it's good to see the work coming together on the vision. Thank you for the update. One of the key things that's obviously naturally going to come out of this is a programme of capital works that require investment. So my question is whether we've considered going to WECA to fund this. I was at the most recent WECA committee in Sylvan funding the Bath Fashion Museum project, which is not the same, but it's kind of similar in that it's a city centre asset that needs investment to drive the economy. I think it fits very well with WECA's growth strategy. But at the moment, it seems like a lot of the projects in WECA's investment fund are skewed towards other parts of our region rather than Bristol. So have we gone there?
Yeah, I'm really keen that we position St Nick's and as part of the vision with a combined authority and investment fund or capital funding that we can get. We also need to position it as a historic asset with National Lottery Heritage funding, and there's a number of different sources of funding that we can look at. So I think it's really kind of well timed that this work is happening. It will really, I think the market's profile has already been raised. This is an opportunity for the profile to continue to be raised in a very positive way, and for us to kind of coalesce around something shared and make sure that we are seeking funding, as many funding opportunities as possible. I agree. I think the Fashion Museum will be amazing, but I also think something in our old city will also be amazing. So absolutely, that there's an opportunity there that we should definitely be kind of seeking from the combined authority, 100%.
Thank you, Anissa. Jenny.
Yeah. Alex asked me at the break if I enjoyed my honeymoon, and I didn't bring up. So I went to Thailand, and one of the things that was astonishing there was how embedded into daily life markets were. Like, just a night market that's a mile long, and at the end of it, there's like a massive music festival, and that happens every week. It was really astonishing. So and it made me think about how important markets can be to different cultures, and that we shouldn't be, scared to think big, I guess. So I guess I wanted to turn that into something more specific. Talking about this vision work, for me, it's how we're going to build trust with the traders, because I think what happened at our last committee session, where we realised we needed to make this vision, that needed to happen. The vision needs to happen so that we can build trust with the traders and make sure that we're reflecting our culture, not that we should be having a mile-long market, but what our market's culture should embody. But thinking about, and I also should say, I went to one of the sessions that the consultant was doing this morning. I'll be trying to attend some others, and trying to go to the ones with the traders. And sort of just the vibe, not to say anything specific about what came out of that, but it was making me thinking about the capacity of the team to deliver what is needed, the fact that a lot of the discussions the traders have had with us, it almost feels like, yeah, we probably could do that if we had a little bit more money, a little bit more staff. And I think the biggest concern I have is that we will get this vision and we'll all say, yeah, this is brilliant, we all want to do this. But we'll be slightly too far away. It will be just out of our grasp for the capacity. And yeah, I wonder how confident you feel as a team, because I think you're all very enthusiastic to get it done. But how much you understand that this is going to be hard, and where the challenges might be.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Anissa, and thank you, Jenny. So it's a really good challenge, and we will have to we'll have to be mindful of that, but also ensure that we do set something ambitious and then match it. But I think it comes down to how much we value the market, and I don't want to talk too much about income, because I think this is about a vision for the market, but ultimately, can we increase its value to the city that it's worth us doing it? And it should be. That should be our ambition. I would also say that this market could have done with a vision a long time ago. And that's not a criticism of the team. That's, the council that's a position the council has taken for a number of years, going back a long time. It's an amazing market. It's amazing because of the traders, but it needs investment. And it's also amazing because the work the team do on site with the traders. Must say that as well. The opportunity there doesn't all have to be for the council to do, and I do think we should be open-minded about who we work with, particularly around the upper floors, for example. We're not property developers, and that's what converting that space would be. And I think that we should all, the service, the traders, members, be open to how actually it needn't all be through the economic development team, and actually that we shouldn't be scared about that.
Can I just add as well, I think the other thing that we're likely to have all of the vision is some short, medium and long term aspects, and those shorter term things are maybe things that are also more affordable in the meantime, whilst we put together business cases for some of the longer term aspirations. And that might also come back to that point about WECA. The investment in the Bath Fashion Museum didn't just come about off the back of a fag packet, did it? It's been, they've worked on that and prepared the ground with, for that investment to be part of the WECA budget this year. And I think, again, the more we have in terms of a vision, in terms of our strategy, in terms of something to, a business case, the better we are positioned to be making those funding bids, because we can say, we've done the preparatory work, here it is, this is what it will generate, this is what it will achieve. Give us a dosh. Alex.
If I may just make a follow-up point. So the comparison with the Fashion Museum is useful because I think Bath and North East Somerset have been working on that for a very long time. And it's the personal champion of the leader of the council there on that project. So I think the context is quite interesting now, and I'll make the connection to the viability report. I think that when the council prepared the development delivery plan for the Broadmead area, if you look at that paper, it's acknowledging the old city as, and how do we make sure this benefits the old city when all of this new development happens in Broadmead. We're now looking at a context where that development won't be happening in Broadmead at the pace that we anticipated it might. And now actually you look at, there's an argument for looking at it through the other end of the telescope, which is how do we really support the market in the old city to bring the city centre more to life over a longer period of time, while this investment comes over a longer term.
Thanks, Alex. Anissa, do you want to come back as well?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, just to kind of build on that point, I think there's a role for officers once the vision has been developed to articulate the benefit of the market within that placemaking, the role that it's playing within the old city, the role that it plays within the city centre, and to be able to articulate that to the combined authority, both as a kind of economic development asset, a cultural asset, a heritage asset. So that's for us to do, and I think that we would be able to build a really good case for investment in exactly that way. You're absolutely right, Chair. The Fashion Museum the concept didn't appear overnight. It's been like sort of been developed for over a long period of time, and I think that we could sort of follow a similar journey. I think also there's consideration that needs to be given to market culture. Councillor Bartle, I think you sort of said this. Like, what is the function of markets? It's a real West Country thing, I feel. And there are other markets that we can learn from, and to kind of bring some of that learning into the vision development as well, I think is really important. Thank you. Just wanted to add that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Anissa. Toby and then Serena, and then I might draw a line under this.
Yeah, if I could just quickly come back on some of the points. So I think we're all broadly in agreement, but I would just say I think there is an opportunity getting in there early in this project with the investment fund. The investment fund does have a revenue element as well as the capital element. For example, with the Fashion Museum, what's just come is the strategic outline business case, I think. So the very first part of the business case that was funded by the investment fund. So we could pitch to get that funding. It could help with the resource capacity issues that Jenny was talking about. And then once you're in the programme of the investment fund, when you later come back and ask for a couple of £1 million from capital, it's much more palatable because the scheme has been developed as part of that fund. So I would just urge to try and get the foot in the door as quickly as possible, even if it's just for the early business case.
Thanks, Toby and Serena.
Yeah, thinking about funding streams, there's a mention in the report, Jason, of the at-risk register for Historic England, and I just wondered what that could bring, if anyone had looked into that, and what sort of sums we might be talking about, because it is a listed building, of course.
Yeah, so we're obviously meeting with Historic England as part of the vision engagement process, and it could release the potential for capital funding in the future from Historic England and or Heritage Lottery, because they tend to put more of their focus on things that are at risk or need investment to continue or to enhance.
Yeah, just to add to that, Historic England, one of our stakeholders that we talked to recently, asked that exact question. So obviously his first point was that you can't just put any building on the at-risk register. You can't just put any building on at-risk register. It's got to meet certain thresholds. So he said without exploring it and looking at it properly, you couldn't guarantee that it might meet those thresholds. And yeah, the positive point is that if it was put on, it might be easier to unlock funding like Heritage Lottery. The negative obviously might be from a PR perspective around kind of council not looking after its buildings, but also the positive of it might galvanise people to look after it and get on with it as well. So that was his response.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm going to bring this to a close at this point. So, as I said earlier, it's an information report, and obviously the work is ongoing in terms of between Play Disrupt and market curators and that engagement exercise. So we're asked to note that a further report will be brought back to the committee to update members on the stakeholder engagement and vision work as set out in this report. So can consider that noted. we can move on to agenda item 9, 2025-26 period 8 finance report. And Alex, this is you.
Thank you, Chair. And I suppose the first thing to say is that this this paper is quite aged now. So P8 is going back to sort of November, December time, I believe. We're now in P10. So this is about the cycle at which papers come through strategy and resources first and then come to this committee. But to summarise, we're, in terms of in-year revenue expenditure for services reporting to this committee, we are forecast at P8. We are forecasting an underspend, and we continue to do so. So in P8 we were looking at about 1.3 million underspend. We are now slightly in excess of that now that we're at P10. In terms of savings, there is one saving at risk as a P8, which is actually related to the income associated from the market because of the savings proposal and the decision, the state of the decision in September last year. There is a table with risks and opportunities in there, which will, if these sort of materialise, the net position will contribute significantly to the overall financial position for the Growth and Regeneration Directorate. In terms of capital, we are forecasting an overall variance against forecast of about 88% as a P8. Some of these figures are quite different from one another. I'll just pick out the minus 165% for South Bristol Light Industrial Workspace. That's now been corrected. That's effectively because in terms of timing, a revenue budget hadn't quite been created for that, but now it has. So that's disappeared. But you'll see that some are under, some are over. Where they're over, that's often because of just budgets not having been moved across, as opposed to being significantly overspent. The GR08A is one of those. I've just had clarity on the Castle Park project that the pressure there, for example, is not being overspent on the project. It's spending more in this year than we anticipated to compared with future years. So the overall project is not overspent. And then there's an extract, section D, on the Harbour Authority. That's showing is that an underspend, I believe? No, it's over. Sorry, break even. Sorry, in the Harbour Authority, and I shall leave it there. If colleagues have questions, councillors have questions.
Thank you, and I should add that Patsy's here, so can probably answer any questions relating to the harbour, but also Harbour Committee sees the harbour budget in detail nowadays. So I think this is maybe a legacy of the pre-changes to the Harbour Committee coming into effect. I saw Toby's hand and I saw Don's hand.
Thanks, Chair. So first question is just a point of clarification on the fee from University of Bristol for Temple Island infrastructure works. So this is a fee that the University of Bristol is paying to the council, and just to understand a bit more what that is and why it wasn't anticipated in the budget. That's question one. Then the second one is just a bit more general. So there is an underspend across the service. things like this fee are possibly going to help us, but also the development management seems to be bringing in more money than anticipated, and we can't really complain about that. They're processing the applications faster and getting that funding in. What opportunities do we have to spend that money? Just thinking back to the previous item where we talked about a lack of available funding for the revenue part of St Nick's Market at Christmas. If alternative funds couldn't be found for that externally, is that something we could use this underspend towards?
I'll bring you in a second, Alex. Just on the planning fees one, because I know that this was something that came up through the budget process. So the challenge with the increase in income from planning fees can only be spent on planning related expenditure, and the allocation of that was largely to meeting, cross what's the word I'm looking for, internal recharges to the legal services, for example, and to those bits within the council who support planning who weren't necessarily getting reimbursed for their time previously. So it's a legitimate use of that expenditure within the constraints of what planning income can be. So that's that one dealt with. I'll leave the rest to you, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the Temple Island project, there are capital works underway on the site at the moment, but that includes also something that will result in access being provided to a part of the site which is controlled by the University of Bristol, and that will require an agreement to enable the access to be provided. So that means that can be classified as revenue.
And if you pass the bus, if you pass on the top deck of the bus, as I do on a regular basis, you can see the extent of the work that's actually happened on Temple Island in terms of preparing it for that development. And as you say, part of that is a site that will be University of Bristol.
Yeah, I mean that's a really significant site. There's been a lot of investment in enabling infrastructure to allow a development to come forward.
Don.
Thanks. Yeah, on the capital budget, so period 8 November, we'd spent 29% of the yearly budget, and we are anticipating spending 88% by the end of the year as I read this. That's perhaps ambitious. What it certainly means isn't, having just been through a budgeting exercise and many of us wanted to put more things in the capital budget with very good reasons, it's always galling to see things having been put in a budget and then the money not having been spent because they actually blocked off other things being done. The money's still there, we've still got it, but it meant that we didn't go ahead with other things because we didn't know that we had the money, and that's because we estimated incorrectly. So I'm sure there are good reasons for all this, but I think it's quite salutary that that figure is low, and it does need some examination as to whether there are kind of systemic things or whether it is just individual. And some of the individual reasons are outlined in the kind of risk register. I totally appreciate that capital projects are never easy, but I just wanted to say that there are consequences to that.
Thanks, Don. I think, I don't know if this was something that came up in one of our previous meetings, was how we get from that 29% figure to the 88% figure at the end of the year, and I guess that's to do with anticipated invoices.
Yeah, so there is definitely a challenge around our ability to properly forecast expenditure over the course of the year, and we're doing some additional work on that at the moment. It's because it's never a straight line across the year. And what I would then say is that I would expect that when we see later reports for this financial year, so say the P10 report, you'll see a sort of hockey stick shaped uptick in in expenditure, but I would anticipate we'll still be short of the original forecast.
And just on that, do you know which report will be at the next committee? Is that P10?
It's P10.
So, yeah, so we'll see that next time. It'll be interesting to see where we're at. You're right. Any other comments on this? I'm not seeing any. Jenny.
Okay. What I wrote is page 44. So I should go to that. Development management. So it's 425, development management. It's massive variance. 45, so it's one up, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, massive variance. What is that?
So that the income from development management fees this year has been much more significant than we forecast in the budget. Government increased the fees during the year after we'd forecast the income for the year. There's also been some large applications that have been registered this year as well.
That's interesting. Okay.
Okay. Right, if there's no further comments on that, we're asked to note the contents of the P8 forecast, and we'll do that and move on to the quarterly performance report. And this one, again, suffers from a little bit of time lag, or quite a lot of time lag, because this is the Q2 quarterly performance report, and we are now well into Q3. No, Q4. We're now well into Q4. So this, I think, is a victim of the cancellation of committee in December. And that's the reason we're getting this now. So again, over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start this, but then I'm going to ask Jane to come in on some specific points in relation to some of the measures. So generally, I mean, as you mentioned, Chair, this is Q2 and we're well into Q4. Generally, I think this report paints quite a positive picture in terms of metrics performing at or in excess of forecast. Not all of them, admittedly, and there are some specific points around employment and skills, which thankfully Jane has arrived to be able to delve into. So if at that point, if I may, just hand over to Jane and invite her to comment on this.
Yeah, this quarter period, which was over the sort of summer, there was a short-term reduction in career coach capacity for CE 269, and I think further down below as well. Yeah, there we go. Skills Connect, BPPM, and so that reduction in career coach. I mean, it kind of there's a kind of good news story underneath, which is the demand for the Skills Connect service, the career coaching, remains really high. But over that summer period, the team had to create a wait list, and there were 100 people on that wait list. The team is now operating at full capacity. They've recruited more coaches, and all the clients have caught up and are now accessing support. So they kind of caught up with themselves. The other thing was that this service, Skills Connect, is part of a regional employment support service. And it's the WECA team who organised the CRM data system. So the other thing the team did was they worked closely with the WECA team, and they realised there was some unreported performance just in terms of how they were entering data, and they've now taken steps through additional training. They're reviewing all their case loads regularly, and so all new client records are going into the system as they should. So both of those things means we've caught up and we're on track. So quarter 3 should be a rosier picture.
Sorry, thank you. Jenny.
I think I say this every time. It doesn't sound like this is an actual reduction, but it shows in the number as a reduction because you report on a quarterly basis. Can you make this reporting metric be a rolling average across a year, if that's possible? And then you can give us an update on what happened in the last quarter. But like the metric should be on a rolling basis. And I think there's quite a few of yours that it's like, well, it was summer, so there weren't any children, or whatever. So it's just more helpful from a council perspective, because it's more helpful to do the year-on-year comparisons than what we actually get, I think.
So I think what they do is they do an accumulative each quarter, so that you've got an annual target, so they're enabling us to see how close they're getting to that annual.
Thank you. Selina.
I think you've answered this, Jane, but I just want to check I've understood. So CE 269, you mentioned the employment support programme, I think, that didn't succeed. Is that because of the shortage of careers coaches? Is that right?
That's right. It was it was impacted in the same way. Yeah.
Okay, so that was that one, and I just want to check off some others if that's okay. I think it's all the same answer. The unforeseen circumstances, that's the same, isn't it, in 268A? Also, the Connect to Work programme that's coming down the tracks, quite a lot of jargon in this space, I appreciate. How does that connect with the Bristol Skills Connect? And just a bit of on the timeline for Connect to Work, 'cause that's a government programme, isn't it?
Yeah.
That goes through WECA, is that right?
That's right, yeah. Okay, so Skills Connect is that's the employability service in the region that WECA have designed with the local authorities. It's been in place now 3-4 years, and it works really well. It's sort of an open service, so anybody can come through the front door. It's people seeking work or seeking better work, and it dovetails really nicely with DWP job centres, which tend to be very targeted at people on universal credit. Then what happens in the cycle of changes in government and new policies and new funding? So we've got our regional service, it's going really, really well. And then government announces Connect to Work, which is a £5 million a year, 5 million each year for 3 years, coming down the pipe to the combined authority. So they've had to do some planning with us in terms of, well, how is this different to what we've already got? How are we going to plug this into what we've already got so that it's a coherent system? The combined authority decided to go down 100% commissioned out route, and they've been through a tendering process for Connect to Work. Connect to Work is it's a high fidelity model, which is supported employment, And the idea of Connect to Work and this model is that an individual within 4 weeks of connecting in to the service will be placed in a job with support. Whereas Skills Connect it can take longer. It isn't subjected to a particular framework. It can be built around the person's needs. Where we've got to in our joint planning with the combined authority is that Skills Connect, if you like, will be a bit of a glue. It will be a bit of a triage. So individuals that come through the door of Skills Connect may end up being referred to Connect to Work because they have more complicated needs, and they would really benefit from that place, train, employ, place, train model, as opposed to advice and support. So we haven't yet done the detailed planning of that triage, but that's the plan. And that's because the combined authority, in going through their tendering process, ended up with 2 contenders, and through their scoring they ended up with 1, and that 1 is going through some financial due diligence. There were a few risks that were identified, so there's some double checking going on. If those all go through okay, we understand that they will be, the aspiration is they'll get going soon, and that they will have delivered their first clients before March 27. So it will start sort of roughly October time. And we will be working with the combined authority in terms of sifting through the people we are already working with who may be able to take this new service up.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll consider that noted, and next month we should have Q3 performance report. So we'll obviously have a much... Serena, did you have another?
I didn't realise you were closing it so soon. It was about planning, actually. It was just, is it PB1? Reasons behind not meeting target on major planning applications processing. It might be very obvious, but I just wanted to check it. That's in the performance report. No, I just wanted...
So what was the reference? PB1, percentage of major planning applications processed within 13 weeks, or as agreed.
Yeah.
This is the only way that has a 12-month, it's negative and it's lower than it was.
Oh, it is, sorry, I thought it was behind.
It's gone down slightly.
It's gone down slightly, but remains above target. That's it, that.
Okay.
I've not got the action. Not got the full on. Oh, yeah, I've not got the. I'm looking at the individual paper rather than the bundle, but I found that. But Alex, do you know anything about that, or is that something that Serena's best addressing directly to Simone?
I can take it away, but I suspect it's probably 1 or 2 cases where we hadn't quite agreed the extension or something like that.
Okay.
But I'll get you an explanation, Councillor.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll draw that to a close again, and we can note that, and also note that next time around, we'll have Q3 performance, so we'll be much more up to date with. Well, say that we'll be at the end of Q4, but we'll be looking at it slightly. It'll be slightly more timely than this time around. And so that takes us on to the final item. Oh, I lost my place in my notes, which is the corporate risk report. And again, so this is a Q3 corporate risk report. And Patsy, it's you. Sorry, juggling my bits of paper and I hadn't managed to get a staple in these, so I was struggling to work out which page came next.
Thank you, Chair. This paper covers Q3 25-26. Its purpose is to provide an update to the committee on any significant risks that's relevant, and the Executive Directors and Directors reviewed the risks in December 2025. There is only one significant risk highlighted in the report, which is CR12, which remains static. The commentary in Q3 advised this will be reviewed by March 2026. This is still the case, and a member briefing has been scheduled to update the committee on this risk in more detail, but it is the only one and it is due to be reviewed imminently. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions at this point, members? I am not seeing any hands. I think we... Fabian, was that a hand or... No. You know, we've obviously quite familiar with the situation on this risk, so I think we can note that and close the meeting. And the next meeting it's on the 30th of March and starts a little later, starts at 3:30 p.m. for reasons which are above my pay grade, I imagine. Okay, that concludes the meeting. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to anyone who's online.